Imagine a world where the fastest you could travel was the speed of a galloping horse, where a journey that takes you 2 hours today would take 2 days, where the smell of gasoline didn't exist and the roar of engines was just a fantasy. But then, in less than 150 years, humans created machines that could fly across continents, race at impossible speeds, and completely reshape civilization itself. This is the story of how a simple idea became the most revolutionary invention in human history. From the first sputtering contraption that barely moved faster than walking, to hypercars that break the sound barrier, to self-driving vehicles that think for themselves. You're about to discover how cars didn't just change transportation, they changed everything. Are you ready to witness the most incredible transformation in human mobility? Let's drive through 10 minutes that will change how you see every car on the road. Our story begins in 1885, in a small German workshop where Karl Benz was about to make history. But here's what most people don't know. Benz wasn't trying to revolutionize the world. He was simply frustrated with horses. Picture this. You're Karl Benz, and you've just spent your life savings on what everyone calls Benz's folly, a 3-wheeled contraption with a single-cylinder engine that produces less power than a modern lawnmower. Your neighbors think you're insane. Your investors have abandoned you. Even your wife has doubts. But on July 3rd, 1886, something magical happened. Benz's patent motor wagon coughed to life and moved under its own power. No horses, no human effort, just pure mechanical force. Yet here's the twist that changed everything. It wasn't Karl who proved the car's potential. It was his wife, Bertha Benz, who made the first long-distance car journey without telling him. She drove 65 miles to visit her mother, becoming the world's first automotive test driver and the first person to prove that cars weren't just workshop curiosities, they were the future. But Bertha's journey revealed a shocking problem that nearly killed the entire automotive industry before it started. A problem so serious that it took 20 years to solve. The problem was simple but deadly. Early cars were luxury toys for the wealthy. In 1900, a single automobile cost more than most people earned in 2 years. If cars remained expensive, they would never become more than rich men's playthings. Enter Henry Ford, but not the Henry Ford you think you know. Everyone knows Ford invented the assembly line, right? Wrong. What Ford actually did was far more revolutionary and almost impossibly risky. He made a bet that nearly bankrupted him. He decided to pay his workers enough money to buy the cars they were making. In 1914, Ford shocked the business world by doubling his workers' wages to $5 a day, equivalent to about $150 today. Experts called him insane. You'll go bankrupt, they warned. Workers don't need that much money. But Ford understood something that escaped everyone else. Workers who could afford cars would create a massive market for cars. It was economic genius disguised as generosity. The result? The Model T went from costing $850 in 1908 to just $290 in 1925. Suddenly, the impossible became inevitable. Ordinary people could own extraordinary machines. But wait, before we dive into what happened next, if you're enjoying this journey through automotive history, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. What's the oldest car you've ever seen in person? And do you think Henry Ford was a genius or just lucky? I read every comment because what happened next didn't just change cars, it changed the entire world in ways no one saw coming. The 1920s and 30s became the golden age of automotive innovation, but it was driven by something unexpected: war and competition. World War II might seem like a pause in automotive history, but it was actually the greatest accelerator. Engineers who had been designing family cars were suddenly tasked with building vehicles that could survive bombs, cross impossible terrain, and transport entire armies. The result? Innovations that took cars from simple transportation to engineering marvels. But here's where our story takes an incredible turn. The moment the war ended, automotive engineers didn't just go back to making normal cars. They had tasted what was possible when limits didn't exist. They had learned to build machines that could do the impossible. Enter the 1950s, the decade when cars became dreams with wheels. The Chevrolet Corvette, the Ford Thunderbird, the Mercedes 300 SL with doors that opened like wings. These weren't just cars, they were rolling sculptures, statements of freedom, symbols of a future where anything was possible. And then came the muscle car era of the 1960s, when American engineers asked one simple question: what happens if we put the biggest engines we can build into the smallest cars we can make? The answer was vehicles like the Shelby Cobra, which could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour faster than most modern supercars, and the Dodge Charger, which became the star of movies before it even hit the streets. But just when it seemed like cars could only get bigger, louder, and more powerful, everything changed overnight. The oil crisis hit like lightning, and suddenly, those gas-guzzling muscle cars became expensive mistakes sitting in driveways. Americans waited in lines for hours just to buy gasoline, if they could find it at all. This crisis should have killed the automotive industry. Instead, it forced the most important evolution in car history since Ford's assembly line. Enter the Japanese automakers, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, companies that had been dismissed by Detroit as makers of toy cars. But these toys could travel twice as far on a gallon of gas as American giants. The result was automotive warfare. American companies were forced to completely rethink everything they knew about cars. Quality became more important than size. Efficiency became more valuable than power. Reliability became the ultimate luxury. And then came the technological revolution. Fuel injection, computerized engines, anti-lock brakes, airbags, GPS navigation. Cars became computers on wheels, packed with more processing power than the spacecraft that went to the moon. But even as cars became smarter, safer, and more efficient, engineers were working on something that would make everything we've discussed seem primitive. While the world economy collapsed, a small company named Tesla made an announcement that everyone ignored. They were going to make electric cars faster than Ferraris, safer than Volvos, and smarter than anything on the road. Experts laughed. Electric cars are golf carts with delusions, they said. No one will ever want a car that needs to be plugged in. They were spectacularly wrong. Tesla's first Roadster could accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds and travel 250 miles on a single charge. Suddenly, electric didn't mean compromise. It meant superiority. But Tesla was just the beginning. Today's electric cars can update themselves overnight, drive themselves on highways, and accelerate faster than any internal combustion engine ever built. The Lucid Air can travel over 500 miles on a single charge. The Tesla Model S Plaid can reach 60 miles per hour in under 2 seconds. And we're standing on the edge of something even more incredible: fully autonomous vehicles that will transform cars from machines. We operate into spaces where we live, work, and play, while traveling at impossible speeds through hyperloop tunnels and flying through the air. From Karl Benz's three-wheeled experiment that barely outran a walking pace to autonomous electric vehicles that think faster than humans and accelerate like rockets, we've witnessed the greatest transformation in human mobility in all of history. But here's the most incredible part. We're not at the end of this story. We're still in the opening chapters. The cars of 2050 will make today's vehicles look as primitive as Karl Benz's first automobile looked to the people of his time. The revolution continues. The best is yet to come. What do you think cars will look like in 2050? Will we still call them cars, or will they be something entirely different? Drop your predictions in the comments. Subscribe for more incredible stories from human history, and remember, every time you turn a key or press a start button, you're continuing a story that began with one man's frustration with horses and became humanity's greatest adventure on wheels.